The National Planning Commission is urging South Africans to place early childhood development at its centre. According to the National Development Plan, ECDs are crucial for children under the age of 6. Professor Mary Metcalfe, education expert at School of Public Management, Governance and Public Policy at the University of Johannesburg, joins us now. Professor Metcalfe, thank you so much for joining us. Now, this is a call that has been made by various members and stakeholders in this industry as well. Do you think it's been taken seriously enough?
Well, thank you, Marsha. The call that was made yesterday at the Nelson Mandela Foundation was made by the National Planning Commission. And the National Planning Commission is the body of people that have been appointed as experts across the range of critical issues that are contained within the National Development Plan. And the National Development Plan is very clear that one of the key things that we need to do as a country is invest in the well-being of our young children. As you've said, in the first 1,000 days, it's critical. So the call to action yesterday was being made by the National Planning Commission because the National Development Plan and its commitment to early childhood development isn't a plan just for government. It's a plan for the whole of society. And I think there are few areas of our social life in which it is more imperative to have all hands on deck, all community organizations, leadership of faith organizations, government at national, provincial, and local level, traditional leaders, philanthropies, everybody recognizing that the way we're going to secure our future is by investing in our children. It cannot be done by government alone. There's many families that need support, and that support will come from community. It will come from community structures, and that is why the NPC has made this call.
And Professor Metcalfe, if you think about just the state of ECD in our country right now, what are some of the challenges when it comes to early childhood development that are hindering us from fulfilling what it says in the NDP to invest in young children?
Thank you for that question, because the challenges actually start from conception. There is a tendency sometimes in South Africa when we talk about ECD to move our heads immediately to those wonderful community-based centers where children, often between the ages of 4 and 5, are given early learning opportunities. But ECD starts from conception. It starts with maternal health. It starts with ensuring that young children are fed adequately from birth. We have high levels of malnutrition. We have high levels of stunting. Now, stunting is when a child is so badly malnourished that they are not able to meet the normal developmental milestones of growth. Now, that's the physical manifestation of hunger. But if you can imagine the cognitive impacts of not having sufficient nutrition from conception through the early years, there's so many learners and young children who may have problems in terms of sensory, auditory, visual impairments. So this is where the importance of community and government come together. We need the Department of Health, the Department of Social Development, we need the Department of Education to work together in an integrated way so that we can make sure that all children thrive by 5. And we have a test that can measure that. It's already been trialed. It's already being used. But if we can say, let's work together to ensure all children are thriving, healthy, fed, intellectually stimulated, loved and cared for, then we've got a firm basis for the future. Government can't do it alone. The call to action says all community structures, faith communities, traditional leaders, we all need to say, this is something on which we can be united. We need to support children.
And how did those various sectors as well receive this call to action by the NPC that was made yesterday? Was it quite a receptive one from different sectors as well? Because as you're mentioning, it's not only government that's going to be able to tackle this as well, but a range of other sectors and people from different departments to, of course, also NGOs and NPOs, but communities at large. How has this message and this call been received?
We were so privileged to have representatives of all of the key communities at the launch, giving their voice to say, this is what we must do. This is something we have to prioritize. The community is critical. So I can give examples such as the representative from the faith communities was saying, we should be making the buildings that we have as part of our faith community structures available for early learning centers. We should be able to use these for play groups. Let us make this a conscious decision to, as faith communities, work with interested people who, from our own communities, and this is where action has to happen. You know, so often we talk about action as if it's all at the top national government. No, national government has a role to play, provincial government has a role to play, but it's actually at community level where the real support of ECD happens. We had a fantastic presenter from Selga who spoke about all of the ways in which local government has a key role to play, ways in which everyone who cares about ECD should be working with local government to make sure that in local government planning, in the way in which we work at local government, ECD is central. We had a person from the presidency talking about making early childhood development the center of all of our planning. The community rep said something that I've loved so much because he said, when you see a child, be curious. Ask yourself questions. Is this child safe? Is this child secure? Is this child hungry? What can we be doing when we see children to recognize the gift that that is and how everyone needs to come together? The more that we can pull through the structures that exist at local level, through their national organizations, into a sense of one thing we all must unite around and we must prioritize, is making the care and security and health of children central in our lives.
And it's quite encouraging to hear some of the things that the people who were in attendance had to say as well, and sharing that same concern for the state of ECDs and children in the country as well. And Prof, when you mentioned earlier things like stunting, it's still quite heartbreaking that we live in a country where this kind of thing happens still. Should this talk shop not result in action? Should this talk shop end up being this just another talk shop, in fact? Then what happens? Does that mean we'll increase numbers of children who are suffering from stunting?
Well, firstly, if we do nothing but talk, we're not going to see action. So the way that we've crafted as the National Planning Commission, both our advisory to government and the call to action. In the advisory, we're saying that the way that government plans must be integrated across the government departments. They need to set a goal that all children must thrive by 5. And then the different components of the indicators of government action need to be part of that plan. So whether it's vaccinations, whether it's feeding, whether it's monitoring maternal health, whether it's identifying all children that need grants, we have to make the individual departments responsible for their components. And we're saying, rather than this just existing as a declaration or a talk shop, reports on each of those indicators need to come into the Cabinet subcommittee, hopefully every 6 months. So Cabinet as a whole can say, okay, let's look at the indicators. Let's identify where we're not achieving our indicators so that we can take corrective action. Now, part of those indicators must also be what are we doing at community level? And those indicators and planning cannot only be at national level. Provincial government has a critical role to play in ECD. We need MECs for health, for social development, for education, for public works, for COGDA, to say this is our plan, we'll make it publicly available, and we will report to communities. We will report publicly against what we're achieving. Not every 5 years. I would like to see it every 6 months.
And as you're mentioning, it's all hands on deck from various stakeholders, community members, but also when we're looking at the departments of health, education, COGTA, social development, also perhaps also we might have to include the Department of Police too, because all too often we find that many young children are facing being victims of crime.
Absolutely. And it's almost incomprehensible that such small children can be victims of crime. Primary school children victims of crime, secondary school children victims of crime. That is why the presidency has got a national plan of action in terms of focusing on the needs of children. This work in the National Planning Commission is complementary to that. But I'm hoping that in the next 5 years, the focus on children from the presidency is going to provide inspiration to the people working so hard at community level to care for children. There aren't always all the resources that are needed, but there are remarkable, often women, who do the work of providing the stimulation and the care and directing families, because the family has to be at the center. The community structures need to assist families when they need the support of the government departments. It's vigilance from community, care from community, as well as the actions that government can take. But children must be at the center.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more. And that's the perfect place to leave our conversation for this evening. Thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.